So what we're doing here, we're awakening to spiritual vision. This is a nice thing. We're awakening to it. It says tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit. Everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. Physical sight simply being that I'm not evaluating the world out there in terms of something I want or I have to have, or that I'm judging either as being something I don't want, that I'm condemning. I'm not condemning it, I'm not praising it, I'm just seeing it for whatever it is, but it doesn't have the same kind of value for me, neither negatively nor positively. Because I realize the only thing that really matters, and it's not just the Course in Miracles that says this, every spiritual tradition says this, the only thing that really matters is love. Right? I mean, when you get right down to it, the only thing that really matters is the fact that we love each other. And that not with just that we love each other. I love the story that you told me this morning in the car coming out. Take a mic and tell that story, will you? Yeah. Can you turn over onto Paul here? Yeah, about your 4-year-old.
Yesterday was my 4-year-old granddaughter's birthday, and we were late getting to the party. It was one of those last-minute things, and I babysit for them. You know, there's 3 of them, all under the age of 4, so I sleep very well those nights. But I do it twice a week. Anyhow, I got to the party late, and she was with all her little minions, her little friends, and I was talking to my son-in-law's father. We were just chit-chatting, and she took me by the finger, and she said, "Grandpa, come." And she led me into the bathroom because it was the only quiet place in the whole house. And she said, "Grandpa, I want you to know I love you." And then she left. That was it. And it was just, I really think that is the Course in Miracles working through me. It has nothing to do with me, you know, that she saw the spirit that the Course in Miracles gave me in these last 26 years. Well,
that's a wonderful story, isn't it? Yeah. Because, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the only thing that really matters.
That's the reward.
That's the reward, right? I tell a story, and there's a piece that I sent around to our mailing list this morning. You can probably find it on your computer when you get home for Monday on Sunday, little inspirational thing, about a story of a guy that once knew it was very hard to get to know, a very kind of rough and difficult person, and he had a stroke. And after the stroke, he became this like really mild and gentle person, and he started telling everybody how much he loved them, and and he died. And I thought, that was under there all the time, the love for everybody, but it got covered over by this mask of something else that was rough and difficult and angry all the time. And that's true there for inside all of us. Something has to open, to break the shell, to crush the mask, to open the heart and open the face to seeing. Go ahead, Lynn.
My mother, when she got dementia, she was very angry and she wasn't very nice. Then all of a sudden, she started loving everybody. Anybody who came close to her, she says, "I love you." Some inspiration.
It's the same kind of thing. Yeah. It's a similar kind of thing, isn't it? That it's right there. I mean, we so easily, you're talking about relationship. I mean, Mike and Brooke during the break there about marriages aren't easy. because there's a lot, marriages are places where a lot of testing happens, right? Sometimes I'll meet a couple and I think that they have a really good marriage, something look like things are really going well, and then one of them's on the phone with me. Oh, there's more work going on here than was than it might have appeared on the surface, right? But that's good, because there's this training ground. There are the place where the work occurs. It's not going to be perfect, but it's okay that we're in there, and if you're in there and you're doing the work and you're waking up through this process, whether it's in a marriage or a child that we're having the relationship, or a boss, or whatever it is. That's how the Course is all about. I could use this phrase several times. The Course is all about relationships. It's all about relationships, and it's all about healing all of our relationships. That's where forgiveness comes in. The forgiveness comes in, and we're letting it be what it is, and we're just loving this person despite the fact that we may be seeing things differently. And then you get down to the point where you can see that the only love is there, and that's the only thing that matters. And now you got to have a mic.
If I can share a passage from the text.
Sure.
Which, really made a huge difference to me. With operating with the premise of the Course in Miracles that everything is either an expression of love or a cry for love. So, only appreciation is an appropriate response to your brother. Gratitude is due to him for both his loving thoughts and his appeals for help, for both are capable of bringing love into your awareness if you perceive them truly, and all your sense of strain comes from your attempts to not do just this.
Right, that's one of my favorite passages too.
Yeah, it's chapter 12 of the text.
So note the first part, only, underline the word only, right? Only appreciation is an appropriate response to a brother. Only appreciation. So even, let's say your boss gives you a hard time and you want to like fight against that or respond in a negative, I mean, the impulse is to do that. But only appreciation is an appropriate response. So this means this is a place of forgiveness. And I want to learn what it is that I have to do to grow through this experience. And I can go, then if I come back with love in a situation where the ego would not come back in love, you will be very surprised how that melts away the problem. It's very hard for somebody not to respond. But if you attack, remember we said earlier, the ego loves conflict? The ego loves a battle. Sometimes I think that what goes on in Congress is that they kind of enjoy the battle, because they want to get into the battle. We set up sides and then we fight it out. Well, I don't know. Is that fun? There may be another place. I don't want to get into politics. That's for darn sure. All right. Let's go back to our slides. So the last line here says this: the ultimate awakening, spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening investment in physical sight. So don't let spiritual vision be blinded by the glare of your physical eyes, or what we call bling bling. That's from Proverbs 29:18. Right? So we're talking about spiritual vision now. Spiritual vision, this is very much in keeping with what you just got through reading, Stavros. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All solutions the physical eyes see dissolve. Because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into its service. Right? Let's go on. Spiritual vision, this is seeing with love, is being another way to talk about that, right? Seeing everything with love. Reestablishes the power of the mind. The mind is actually weakened when it's angry and attacking, right? And makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. So this is really growing in depth in terms of the Course. You're seeing these little things which before would have distracted you, would have taken the peace of mind away from you, a very tiny thing, the way somebody says something, the tone of the voice, the implied intent behind it, all of that, none of that matters. None of it matters at all. The only thing that matters is I continue to love in the situation. That I come back, that I continue to respond in love, and I just keep responding in love, and again, it's going to melt away the problem. So we allow for a million distractions, hurtful habits, for example, or just distractions for us. I saw that. You've got the mic.
Oh, hi. Yeah, well, I find that it still comes in, but I could recognize it much faster, and it is a wonderful feeling.
Exactly. Right. It comes in, you recognize it, you see it, and you let it go. And I don't need to go there. I don't need to go
And
there.
say thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for guidance in the right direction. I'm being guided in the right, but also your part of your willingness to be guided. It's the two parts. The Holy Spirit is always there guiding, but we've got to be willing to do the right thing. It's just so incredibly simple. That's what we're weaning ourselves away from the ego, and we're being progressively more and more following this very wise guide in all of our decision making, which we call the Holy Spirit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, some of you know more about this. Several books and articles have been written about the similarities between Alcoholics Anonymous and the Course in Miracles teaching. There are phenomenal similarities. I'm just going to go over the first 3 of the 12 points. This is not something I've ever had to go through, but I have a lot of appreciation for how the similarity between these two books. We are all ego addicts. That is the experience we all have, right? Looking to get sober. Addiction to the ego makes us miserable. It really does make us, you don't realize. Nobody, somebody said, well, you enjoy being angry. No. Got that? You don't really enjoy being angry. How could you enjoy being angry? Partly because you actually know at the time that you're doing it that you're wrong, but it's got such a hold on you that you think that you can't get out of it. Actually, sometimes you can get away from it far enough. Let's say a couple has a fight, and then you kind of you separate, you go the other way. This used to happen with my teenage daughter, where something would happen, and I just realized that right now is the time for us to go in different directions, right? So we go into her room, I go to my room, and then an hour later, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. You gotta calm it down to get to the point of recognizing, oh, that I really slipped there, right? I let the ego take its hold, and that didn't need to happen, right? So let's look. Pardon?
You took the bait.
Yes, exactly. Just some of you remember years ago we had a song?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a little song called Don't Take the Bait. Don't be or real. Don't let the ego out of the gate. Hold your tongue and simply wait. Don't take.
Don't take the bait.
My gosh, you got to remember it better than I do. All right. So let's look at the first 3 steps. So we admit that we are powerless over alcohol. So here we admit that we're powerless over the ego. Okay? That our lives have become unmanageable. So we've allowed the ego to run our lives. This is putting it in Course in Miracles. So we admit we've allowed the ego to run our lives. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Or, in Course terms, we cannot live without God who is life. It's the same, I just put, the yellow is what I wrote, rephrasing it in Course in Miracles terms. Right? 3, make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. And then, of course, the Miracle says the power of decision is your last remaining freedom. So we go with that. And the last remaining, we make that decision. We're going to change things. Ken said that repeatedly. Again, here's my favorite picture of Jesus. So what motivated Jesus? What motivates you to be you? Are you happy with the you think you are? To know the truth is to be the truth. We attain truth as we remove the blocks through the awareness of love's presence. And we'll go on. So we are not egoistic somethings in a materialistic world. Our greatest need is simply to be the self, the one self, the Christ we already are. It's already there. It's why it's just an awakening to this remembrance of what is already there. Christ waits inside each of our hearts, ready to break forth into the reality. Our greatest need is God. Or Einstein, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. So we're just changing our thinking. We're changing our mind. You must change your mind about the purpose of the world if you want to find escape. You will be bound until all the world is seen by you as blessed and everyone made free of your mistakes. In other words, stop complaining. I stumbled onto a video this last week and looking around at something on the internet. It's all the things that are out there now, it's so amazing. And it was actually a friend of mine who had passed. And I didn't know that he had passed. This is somebody I hadn't seen in several years, who lived out in Kentucky. And it was a video, I guess, that was made by some of his children not too long before he died, maybe a year or so before he died. And his name was Jack Poole. And Jack was talking to his immediate family about how, I think at that point he was already sick probably, right? How he had decided that he was just going to love everyone. That he was just going to love everything. That was it. That's all he had to do for the rest of his life. And I actually came to a similar conclusion when I found out that I had cancer and that it had spread. And I remember thinking, well, maybe you don't have too long, so what are you going to do in the time you got left? Let's say it's a few months. Well, I'm just going to love the hell out of everything, right? Just love the hell out of everything. What else are you going to do? I have another friend, by the way, who signs his letters, loving the hell out of everything.
And that's contagious.
That's contagious. Yes, that's contagious. And I know how much his adult children loved him. So here's your flexing your miracle muscle, Linda. Flexing our miracle muscle, we have to practice. Bringing into being what we know is true. So this is just practice. You just practice loving the hell out of everything. Right? If you want to be free of addiction, lose weight, save money, or even get your house cleaned up, pick up some very practical thing, any practical thing, flex your miracle muscle, and just do it. Let miracle mindedness be what it is. Let it happen because you can. There's no running away from it. And here's this quote from Rumi that I was talking about earlier. When you do things from your soul, you feel a river of joy within you. Isn't that nice? When you do things from your soul, you feel a river. It's just joyful. It just feels good. It just feels nice. It just feels natural. It may be literally, like I said before, cleaning up a mess. And you know how nice it feels to clean something up? I mean, to get it done, right? To fulfill the assignment. And then you look, oh, well, I don't have to think about that anymore. I've actually painted the room in Paul's case, or he's got to paint the rooms in his house now. Or whatever it is that I've done, that's then. So inner guidance is always possible. Miracles are natural, as I said before. It is 5. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong. So the ego is an ally of time. It's because time is where the story is, right? If I don't have a story, then there's a past and a present and a future. But if I'm caught in the story, then I'm caught in the drama of the story. So every ego has his or her story. We could speak of a historical Jesus as a character in time, but the eternal Christ sounds completely outside of the mind. I noticed that one of the things that happened with this retreat, there seems to be a lot of interest in the historical Jesus and his time and trying to kind of recreate that in a new way now. But it's really, what we're really looking for is the Christ mind, isn't it? Okay. Star Trek had a prime directive. The prime directive was that they were not to interfere with any other civilization, right? Okay, they weren't not to get involved at that level, not physically involved, right? So now let's go back. So the body of the Course in Miracles tells us, and this actually addresses something you were saying earlier, is that we've said here many times before, a learning device, a school, a mental hospital, a reformatory, a prison. In any event, it is not heaven. And the Course in Miracles is the textbook, and Jesus, i.e. the Holy Spirit, is our teacher. God does not will that we get ourselves into trouble, nor can he interfere with our free will. That's an important point, because that's one of the characteristics of divinity. One of the characteristics of divinity is that you have free will. You have to have free will, which now seems to open this Pandora's box of trouble. Namely, that we could do something that would be outside of the will of God, right? Which is in essence what the ego is trying to do. However, there's no war here. I mean, there's no fighting on the part. The Holy Spirit, the Course in Miracles says, does not recognize the ego. It's not that it's ignoring the ego or I pretend you don't exist. There you go. What it's doing is it literally doesn't recognize it because it's not there. Because there is, how could you have something which would stand in opposition to God? You can't. That's why this whole world is an illusion. This is the deeper metaphysics of A Course in Miracles. You have to appreciate the deeper metaphysics of the Course. There can't be an opposite to God, right? So the Holy Spirit can provide guidance, but we've got to be willing students. So the ego is a contradiction in terms. While it looks as though the ego has freedom to choose outside of the mind of God, this is pretty much what I just said. Choosing outside the mind of God actually puts us in prison, because now we become seemingly entrapped. We're entrapped within the framework of the ego, and we think that we can't get out of that framework. And the more entrapped that you feel that you are, the more miserable you are. I know someone who suffers from paranoia. Paranoia is a very difficult state of mind. And they feel very trapped because they're convinced that someone is after them, right? That they're watching them, that they're monitoring their activities, whatever it is that's going on. That is a very difficult state of mind. But the ego seems to have a real hold there, despite the fact that this is a very intelligent individual. I'm not surprised that it's a very intelligent, because intelligence doesn't seem to matter on that level. Sometimes people are in deep trouble, are still very intelligent, but despite the intelligence, they don't see the way out. I mean, they don't see that there's a door to freedom. So free will means only that we can elect what lesson we are learning at a given time in the course. Free will, that's where does that line appear? Anybody know?
Yeah, in introduction.
It's in the internet. It's like the second or third sentence in the Course in Miracles, right? It's a very, very introduction. I mean, you can elect what you want to take at a given time. That's the free will. Free will is given to us by God in order that we might experience our joy in creating. That's a nice thing, isn't it? That we might experience joy in creating. Actually, if you think, what gives you the greatest joy? I'm going to suggest to you that your greatest joy comes in loving. Comes in not being the recipient of love, but being in the giver of love. I mean, you just take a simple illustration as presents at Christmas. So what gives us joy? Is it opening a present, or is it watching is it watching the face of our beloved or what our grandchildren or whatever it is as they receive whatever it is that they're receiving? So how can you not be loving and not enjoy it, right? And the basic principle in the Course as well, everything boomerangs, cause and effect, what goes around comes around. As you give, so do you receive. As you hurt another, you hurt yourself. So why in the world would we hurt someone else? You cannot not hurt yourself. And the way you hurt yourself, it isn't a physical thing. It's a mental thing. So what you're hurting yourself because you now have guilt. Guilt is really a stinker. It's the thing that comes in, and Ken emphasizes this a lot. It is a thing which binds you into this ego thing in a way that then you feel like you cannot get out of the guilt. And this is especially true when you have a secret, a secret that cannot be shared. Therefore, it traps you into this world, this secret world. Now, one of the things we didn't go on with AA, I just looked at the first 3 of those characteristics. But had we gone on with more of the characteristics, I know that one of those principles is that you are willing to share with God, at least one other person, and yourself, right, what it is that's wrong. You admit that your life is uncontrollable, to the alcohol, for example, right? And then another step in AA is that you're willing to make amends for this. The Course doesn't talk about that in that same sense of making amends. It might, in the sense of we might ask for forgiveness of someone that we've hurt. That might be an interesting demonstration that would help. But sometimes you might find that the other person won't even know that you. Pardon?
We're bothered by it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I forgot what it was. Years and years ago, I said something to Marianne Williamson about, I'm sorry about something, and she said, what? I don't know. There was nothing. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? And I don't even remember what it was, because it was years ago, and it doesn't matter. So, literally doesn't happen. I don't think either one of us remembers what that was all about. So this is from, not Star Wars, Star Trek. Am I the only one around here that cares about the Prime Directive? If you remember Star Trek, one of the things that happened was that sometimes they didn't get involved. I mean, that's what made the story, right? If you got involved, then you got a drama. Then you got a reason to have a story as to how it was going to come out. So you are not asked for total dedication to the kingdom all the time as yet. Now this is still in the beginning. This is around lesson 181 again. Right? We're moving in the direction of making the total commitment, but we're doing it gently. We're taking one step at a time toward, one day at a time in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? One day at a time, until we get to the point where you can feel that is probably not a problem, and that you're lacking in the desire to go back, or maybe even not be able to understand why that was so important for you once upon a time. So the course requires practice. Remember, we're all students. Is there anything you want more than to be at peace? You got peace, we got it, we said that earlier. But you're asked to practice now in order to attain the sense of peace. Such unified commitment will bestow, if only intermittently. So bit by bit, little bit by little bit, I come to have the peace. Again, another good way to have this experience is through meditation. If you can get to the point in meditating that you can just experience this for a while, that's good. And then you maybe will get the desire to meditate, just so that you can get into that space. Right? It's experiencing this that makes us sure that you will give your total willingness to following the way the Course sets forth. So, it is essential that you realize your thinking will be erratic until a firm commitment to one or the other, darkness or light, is made. You can't make the firm commitments to darkness, so you can only make it to light. A firm commitments to darkness, the next line says it, or nothingness, however, is impossible. And again, I emphasize the line I've said many times before, there's no one here in whom the light has gone out completely. There's always that little spark of energy in there which could turn everything around given the right opportunity to do so. It might require something like a confession, getting it off your chest, getting clear in order to be able to move forward once again, right? Sometimes when some people will actually be glad that they're no longer hiding anymore. I mean, they actually feel good. Even though the truth is not something that's pleasant, at least it's not weighing on them with the same weight that it once did. No one has ever lived who has not experienced some light and something. That's good news. No one, right? No one, therefore, is able to deny truth totally, even if he thinks he can. That's really good news. So, how can one be sincere and say, I want this above all else, and yet I do not want to learn the means to get it? You got to want to do it, right? Vision has no cost to anyone. We are here to learn the means to achieve vision. And I mentioned these earlier, but let's go through them. I am determined to see lesson 20, 27, and 28. I am determined to see. Above all else, I want to see. And above all else, I want to see differently. This is the commitment. All right? We are looking to change the mind. If the mind changes, behavior will change. Focus on changing the mind. Nothing can happen till the mind changes. One thing you cannot do is to make a decision for someone else. I said that earlier. Having grown up with horses, I know this to be true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You cannot make a decision for someone else. You can lead in that direction, but it's going to be their decision. So learning to think in alignment with the Holy Spirit, the Course calls right-mindedness. Wrong-mindedness is obviously thinking in alignment with the ego. So the right mind, by definition, is the part of our separated mind that contains the Holy Spirit, which is also defined in the Course as the voice for God. It's another way that we could talk about it. I kind of like that. Actually, sometimes I just like using the word Spirit rather than Holy Spirit. We don't have to have the adjective. Right? The Holy Spirit, the shared inspiration of all the sonship, induces a perception in which many elements are like those in the kingdom of heaven itself. In other words, love is there. Synonyms for induces. Listen, just go back. The Holy Spirit, the shared inspiration of all the Son, induces a perception. All right, so induces means persuades, encourages, makes, convinced we're talking about changing the way we see. We're talking about changing our perception. So this Holy Spirit helps to induce that perception. First, the Holy Spirit's universality is perfectly clear, and no one who attains it could believe for one instant that sharing it involves anything but gain. A good example, again, is sharing our love. We've mentioned that several times. Second, it is incapable of attack. The Holy Spirit is incapable of attack. Right perception is incapable of attack, and therefore truly open. This means although it does not engender knowledge, it does not obstruct it in any way. Knowledge then just gently flows into the mind. Knowledge is something perfectly natural. There's nothing you have to do to earn it. You just have to get out of its way. Just let it, you just know. This is about just being once again. And again, I capitalize on the word engender. Another interesting word, synonyms would include produces, causes, creates, stimulates, provokes, brings about knowledge. Well, we got to get ourselves into a position where we can allow that knowledge to come into our mind. You see it with clarity. It's not something that you have to really work on. Lesson 27, we said earlier, means this idea expresses something stronger than mere determination. It gives vision among your desires. Vision, we talked about spiritual vision a moment ago. Vision in course terms is the perception of Christ, or the Holy Spirit that sees beyond the body to the Spirit that is true, that is our true identity. It's just seeing, it's just being, it's just knowing, and without doubt and without question. So this is the way I respond to the world. Remember my friend Jack Poole, who died not long ago, I mentioned how he made the decision. He was telling his family that at some point prior to this, he decided that he was just going to love everything. It was a deliberate choice that he made to just see the world that way. And having known him and known the way that his family must have responded to that, they really loved him. You need a mic.
I like your story about Jack Poole, and it raises the question, when everything falls away, what's left?
Mm.
I mean, absent of the ego, I mean, all that's left is love, but Jack Poole probably wasn't well enough to drive a car or own a house or do anything, so basically he lost. He hit bottom, in a sense, as a human being in terms of acquisition and sensory pleasures and all that stuff.
Right.
And when all that falls away, all the things that we value like that, what is left? And the answer is love.
At some point, years ago, several years ago, I gave a talk called "I'm Nobody, Who Are You?" Years ago, I gave a talk called "I'm Nobody, Who Are You?" And at some point, I'd like to go back and kind of revise that and go into it in a deeper sense, because the ego's problem is that it thinks it is somebody, So it's really helpful to be nobody, because once I'm nobody, special, right? Then I can just and nothing has to happen in relationship to me. Yeah.
Isn't the body, though, the ego's only claim to fame?
Well, that's the part of the point. I mean, the part of the point is the Course's emphasis upon the fact I am not a body. So the body is a tool, it's an instrument, which I understand that I want to keep healthy and working well so that I can do the kind of things I want to do in the world without it becoming an impediment for me. I certainly don't want it to become an impediment. So I will do what I can to make it function well, but I'll just use it that way. But it's not who I am. As I've said many times before, there will not be a John Mundy in heaven. You know, there's no picture of a face or of a body or anything like that, or any of those, no name. You know, you know, this the poem by Emily Dickinson, I'll say it, I love it so much. I'm nobody, who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us, don't tell. They banish us, you know, how boring to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to say your name the whole day long to some admiring bog. You know, there's a king frog in a pond somewhere, and there are billions of prawns in the world. I mean, there are literally, Minnesota's 10,000 lakes is a lot more than that, actually. How many places are there where there are kings? Chairman of the board of trustees, right? Well, that's nothing to that unless there's something to that. You know, unless I make something out of nothing. And then the ego get involved in making something out of nothing, and then we got hurt feelings and difficulties going on and arguments and stuff. You know, hopefully one of the advantages of death, and it really is an advantage of death, is the letting go. Remember the other friend that I mentioned earlier today, who was a rough and tumble kind of exterior, who had the stroke and then became this loving person, couldn't stop saying I love you to everybody. You know, it's right there. It's that close to the surface. We can do that because it is there. And I'm nobody. And nobody's anybody. Egos have really a lot of troubles. It's a troubled world, right? But it's best not to be troubled. That's why there's no value in being remembered. I mean, what's that? What would being remembered be? So what? A few people remember you for a little while? No, that's, you know, we don't take that. We don't take any accoutrements with us into heaven. All of it must be put aside. But then there's this. I did have this profound death experience in 1976 of going through this. And then afterwards, there was this immense peace of quietude and just being able to look and see with new eyes, because the eyes were no longer covered over with the projection. You know, if there wasn't any projection of evaluation that was going out that involved condemnation or appreciation, either one, then it's just like being a baby again. And there's a wonderful experience being just actually on Halloween. I went around our neighborhood, and my daughter and her husband brought kids over, and another family, their friends, and 3 little kids, and I somehow or another got the baby. And the baby was just in a stroller. And so I said, I'll take the baby, especially pushing it. You guys, you watch the older kids, right? So I'm pushing this baby around. We live on a big circle, right, around, and going up a hill and down a hill. And that baby, throughout that entire time, just remained. So fixed. And I just, every time I would look at her, she's just looking at me. You know, just looking. Look, the eyes didn't go. She didn't look away. Try that with some adults. They won't look at you straight in the eye like that. They can only take it for so long, and they'll look away. You know, because the ego gets involved in that, right? But babies have got no agenda. You know, there's nothing going on there, so they can just look for a long, long time. So why don't we wrap up? I want to do a little meditation at the end. Anybody have any observations or questions you'd like to? Al, go ahead.
It's just
Get a mic.
a little formulation
Yeah.
that I think is great about
Okay.
being nobody. It's who I think I am. It's who I want you to think I am.
Your mic's on, I don't think.
Is it on?
I don't know, talking to
There's who
Oh, there it is. Go
I
ahead.
think I am. There's who I want you to think I am. There's who you think I am. And then there's who I think you think I am. So it's like this phantom
Complicated.
dance that occurs. It's all part of the projection, the illusion, the ideas of who we think we are.
I got it. And that's very good. Yeah. It's very helpful to see that and to see that none of that matters. Right? All right, so shall we do a meditation?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to just close your eyes and get comfortable. And this is one of those meditations where I ask that you repeat a phrase after me. So like 6 or 7 times I will say, God is the mind in which I think. And then I will say with me, and you will say with me. This is lesson 45 from the workbook of the Course. So let's close our eyes just to shut out the world. God is the mind in which I think. Today's idea holds the key to what your real thoughts are. They are nothing that you think, just as nothing that you think you see is related to vision in any way. There is no relationship between what is real and what you think is real. Nothing that you think is real resemble your real thoughts in any respect. Nothing that you think you see bears any resemblance to what vision will show you. Say with me, God is the mind with which I think. You think with the mind of God. Therefore, you share your thoughts with Him as He shares His with you. They are the same thoughts because they are thoughts by the same mind. To share it is to make alike or to make one. Nor do the thoughts you think with the mind of God leave your mind, because thoughts do not leave their source. Therefore, your thoughts are in the mind of God as you are. They are in your mind as well, where He is. As you are part of His mind, so are your thoughts part of His mind. Where then are your real thoughts? We will have to look for them in your mind, because that is where they are. They must still be there, because they cannot have left their source. What is thought by the mind of God is eternal, being part of creation. Say with me, God is the mind with which I think. We are attempting to leave the unreal and seek for the real. We will deny the world in favor of truth. We will not let the thoughts of the world hold us back. We will not let the beliefs of the world tell us what God would have us do is impossible. Instead, we will try to recognize that only what God would have us do is possible. Say with me, God is the mind with which I think. Only what God would have us do is what we want to do, and we cannot fail in doing what He would have us do. There is every reason to feel confident that we will succeed. It is the will of God. Repeat the idea to yourself, God is the mind with which I think. Try to go past all the unreal thoughts that cover the truth in your mind. Reach to the eternal. Under all the senseless thoughts and mad ideas with which you have cluttered up your mind are the thoughts that you thought with God in the beginning. They are there in your mind now, completely unchanged. They will always be in your mind exactly as they always were. Say with me, God is the mind with which I think. You may be unable to, as yet, to realize how high you are trying to go. This is no idle game, but an exercise in holiness, an attempt to reach the kingdom of heaven. Repeat the idea to yourself and say with me, God is the mind in which I think. Appreciate your mind's holiness. Stand aside briefly from all thoughts that are unworthy of Him, whose host you are, and thank Him for the thoughts He is thinking with you. One last time, say with me, God is the mind with which I think. And now let's go, I want to go back several slides to here. And this is the Lord's Prayer from the Course. So shall we say this together? Pause at every comma, stop for a second at every period. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions, and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What would there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, where the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the mind, which you created and which you love. Amen. Thank you. So our next class, and gosh, it's hard to believe it's the end of the year, is the 8th of December. Remember, we're going to have a party at the end, bring something to share, and we're going to get to listen to Al. Some classical guitar? Wonderful. I'm really looking forward to that. Okay?
Bring healthy food.
Bring healthy food, yes.
Yeah.
All right.